I'm Cheryl State Bryson, mom, divorcee, health nut, and host of the Healthy Mom After Divorce podcast, where I help divorced moms get healthy, create financial stability, and develop emotional fortitude while they master co-parenting their kids. The place is here, and your time is now. So let's do this. Hey, healthy mamas. Welcome, and thank you for joining me for the 13th episode of the Healthy Mom After Divorce podcast. I hope you all are doing really well, and I am doing awesome, and I'm really excited to be here. So as always, you can find the full transcript for this episode at healthymomafterdivorce.com/13. So today I want to talk about fantasies. No, not that kind, a different kind. So I want you to think back to when you were first separated. That time when you knew it was the end of your marriage, but you were still trying to figure out how life was going to look afterwards. Sure, there may have been some conflict as you and your ex were sorting out division of assets, parenting time, support values, extracurriculars, all that kind of stuff. But you figured that it would be temporary. And since then, you've been waiting for this temporary conflict-ridden period to end. You hold on to the hope that eventually you and your co-parent will get to a place where you can communicate civilly, respect boundaries, and make decisions that are in the best interest of the kids. You've been waiting patiently for that time when there are no more hard feelings or blame being cast back and forth or actions done out of spite for one another. You just know that there will come a time when neither of you says negative things about the other. Then, of course, the Holy Grail arrives. The kids don't feel any tension between the two of you because you both have moved on and can make decisions about the kids without any emotional baggage. Do you have this fantasy? If you answered yes, that's okay. There's no shame in it. It is very common and something I see all the time in the world of divorced mums. So let's unpack it a little. First, why am I calling it a fantasy? Well, 2 reasons. 1, because it isn't currently our reality. And 2, it's perceived as the desired state to be in. It's considered intrinsically better than the phase we're in right now. I think most of us would agree on these things. We can see that our reality is far from ideal right now, and that there are improvements we could make and should make. And we also see that the picture I painted would, in fact, be a better scenario than we're in right now. And we definitely feel that it's possible. I mean, why wouldn't it be? We've all heard of or seen healthy co-parenting relationships. But where the issue lies is not in the fantasy's validity or even possibility, but in its probability. So, for clarity, I'm going to distinguish between those last two. The possibility of something happening refers only to the chance that it could. So even if there is one family somewhere where the co-parents get along swimmingly, it makes the fantasy possible. The probability of co-parents being besties after divorce, though, is low. And the probability is particularly low in the case of a high conflict co-parenting relationship, or in the case where the relationship, when you were married was abusive or that sort of thing. Think of a lottery. There is always a possibility of you winning. I mean, somebody eventually wins no matter how many tickets they pull. But the probability of it happening is so low that for many, it's just not worth spending the money in the first place. Ex-spouses co-parenting their kids where they get along amazingly is rare, very rare. That's why it stands out. And I know there will be people that disagree with me. Maybe they think that they're those co-parents or it's people they know. And although I recognize there is a chance that's the case, I also think there are other factors at play here. If they are talking about people they know, how well do they really know this family's co-parenting relationship? Are they looking from the outside in, where things are often not always as they seem? Or perhaps in that co-parenting relationship they're talking about, one person is actually in control while the other parent is complacent. From the outside, it looks amicable and healthy, but from the inside, there is still one parent steamrolling the other. So although it looks amazing from the outside, in reality, it's not healthy and still does plenty of harm to the kids. When you are thinking about how your co-parenting relationship should look, I want you to ask yourself this. What was my marriage to this person like? How did we resolve conflict? How did they speak to me? How did they treat me? How did they make me feel? Did they respect my boundaries? Did they give me space when I asked? Was I involved in decision making? Now, with those answers in mind, I want you to reflect on your divorce and co-parenting relationship. Did you think that how they treated you during your marriage would be different from how they treat you in your divorce? I'm sure logically you can answer this question and say, well, of course not. They would treat me the same. But if you're holding on to a co-parenting fantasy where the two of you get along and resolve conflicts perfectly and you respect each other, you may not be applying this logic. How your partner treated you during your marriage will be how they treat you during your divorce. Period. And if you add in other factors like abuse or high conflict personalities, infidelity, debt, all, things that make everything more difficult, this fantasy should now be completely off your radar. And I'm not telling you all of this to cause despair. In fact, I wanted to do the opposite, to give you hope. This fantasy is not the only way to co-parent. And it's not the only way to co-parent that causes minimal emotional harm on the kids. There are other ways. But relentlessly striving for this ideal is problematic for 3 reasons. First, it assumes it is the ideal in the first place. Number 2, you then judge and shame yourself when you can't get there. And third, you stay stuck in the hamster wheel, and it doesn't let you develop into a strategy that actually works for you and your kids. Just for fun, though, let's assume it is in fact the ideal situation. The Cadillac of all divorced co-parenting scenarios. Does that mean it works for you? Do we assume that, if given the opportunity, everyone would want to own a Cadillac? That it's a total given, that clearly no one would turn one down, and really the only limiting factor is the cost? Or is it actually true that people don't turn down Cadillacs just for the cost? Regardless of income, maybe they live on a dirt road and a Jeep makes way more sense. Or they have a boat, so a pickup truck is clearly the better choice. I know the analogy isn't perfect, but what I'm asking is the Cadillac really the gold standard if it doesn't fit everyone's life? I think this applies to co-parenting as well. Co-parents being besties, maybe the Cadillac for that family, but if co-parents have a bumpy relationship on a gravel road with potholes and twists and turns, maybe they're better off with that pickup. It'll be a smoother ride for everyone. I am not here to give you advice on what is the best co-parenting situation in your case. But there are a ton of options, lots of ways of structuring communication and parenting time and extracurriculars. Co-parenting relationships live on a spectrum, not an either-or coin that says either you're co-parenting this way or you're not co-parenting at all. And for those of you that are co-parenting with a high conflict person, whether they've been formally diagnosed with a personality disorder or simply display the traits, there are ways to make the situation better for you and your kids. You can have very structured communication guidelines. You can have strong physical boundaries. You can have a well-defined parenting schedule. I also want to introduce you to something called parallel parenting. And if you haven't heard of it before, it's essentially when what happens at one parent's home is completely separate from the other parent's home. There's no overlap. There's no conversation about bedtimes and, television show choices and extracurriculars. It's just exactly what it sounds like. It's parallel. There's two parallel lives going on. And I won't go into too much more detail than that, but it's very common in high conflict co-parenting relationships. It has been well researched and has shown that children in high conflict situations do vastly better with a parallel parenting model than a conventional co-parenting system. So I'll put a link in the show notes if you'd like more information on that. I definitely recommend checking it out. So remember, you don't have to have the Cadillac. And just because you don't have the Cadillac doesn't mean your kids won't be safe or even safer in the Jeep. You do not have to be fully integrated with your co-parent for your kids to grow up healthy and safe. Remember, you got divorced for many reasons. And all those reasons don't go away after divorce. In fact, they often get worse, at least for a period of time. Divorce can be like throwing gasoline on a fire. The fire will explode into something much bigger. It does eventually burn out, but the scorched earth that's left might not be where new flowers can grow. Let go of the fantasy and open your mind to other possibilities. Reach out for help, do some research, and then create a co-parenting reality that works for everyone. If you could use some help figuring out what you and your kids need, definitely reach out. You can book a 45-minute free discovery call with me at healthymomafterddivorce.com/workwithcheryl. And we can go over what you need and how I might be able to help. Chin up, healthy mama. And remember, healthy moms raise healthy kids. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave a review. And if you like what you heard, share this episode with other mums. Don't forget to follow me on social media. And if you want to learn more about me and what else I have to offer, head over to healthymomafterddivorce.com. I can't wait to connect with you.